So what was it really like to be a human, say, 40,000 years ago? Seriously, let's forget all the cartoons and the clichés for a minute. Okay, let's dive into the surprising, and I mean really surprising, reality of a day in the life of our distant ancestors.
You know, we all have this picture just burned into our minds, right? These hairy, brutish figures, always running from some saber-toothed tiger, where every single moment is just a desperate, gritty search for the next meal. And this is the classic description that has stuck for centuries. It paints this picture of a long, grim nightmare, a life of constant hardship and terror, where every day was just about pure, raw survival.
But what if that whole story is just wrong? What if the archaeological evidence and what we know from modern hunter-gatherers actually tells a radically different story? A story not just about survival, but about a life that was surprisingly rich and, believe it or not, pretty relaxed. It all starts with how you wake up. And for our ancestors, that experience was about as alien to our modern morning routine as you can possibly imagine. Okay, so imagine waking up, not to a buzzing alarm clock, but to the soft, gray light of dawn filtering through the trees. There was no rushing, no concept of being late. Your day was literally governed by the sun. And sleep itself, it was totally different. They had what's called polyphasic sleep. So instead of one long block of 8 hours, you'd have a first sleep and a second sleep, with this quiet period of wakefulness in the middle of the night. It was a time to talk, to tend the fire, or just think, all while creating this constant communal safety net.
And what about breakfast? Well, there wasn't one. Not really. There were no set meal times. You just ate when you were hungry, and you ate whatever was around. It was completely opportunistic. Maybe it was some leftover meat from a hunt a couple of days ago, or a handful of hazelnuts. Or maybe it was cattail roots that had been slowly roasting in the fire's embers all night long, turning all that indigestible starch into sweet, life-giving energy. All right, so everyone's up, they've had a bite to eat, now the workday begins. But what did work actually mean for them? This is where those old stereotypes really, truly start to fall apart. You see, the big mammoth hunt gets all the glory in our imagination, but honestly, it was the exception, not the rule. The day-to-day reality was that the vast majority of calories, we're talking up to 80%, came from gathering. And why is that? Well, it's simple. Plants are reliable. They stay put. Hunting was this high-stakes, high-risk gamble, but gathering, that was the patient, knowledgeable work that actually kept everyone alive.
So the big question is, how long did all this life-sustaining work, finding food, preparing it, fixing your tools, how long did that actually take? Well, here is probably the most stunning fact of all. Most studies suggest it only took about 4 to 6 hours a day. That's it.
4 to 6 hours of work. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. The rest of the time was their own. It was for socializing, playing, creating, telling stories, or just being. You know, in terms of sheer free time, our Paleolithic ancestors were arguably way richer than most of us are today. So, if you're not constantly struggling just to survive, what do you do with all those extra hours in the day? Well, you get creative. You invent culture.
Even their tools were so much more than just bang together rocks. This was expert craftsmanship. The process was incredible. It required this deep, intuitive understanding of the stone. They even created a kind of prehistoric superglue from pine resin and animal sinew to attach handles. These weren't just tools, they were really works of art.
And with all that time, they filled their world with things that weren't strictly necessary for survival, but were absolutely essential for being human. I mean, we found 40,000-year-old flutes that can still play musical scales. We found what looked for all the world like dice and game boards. We find intricate jewelry, stunning cave paintings, and even these tiny carved animals that could really only have been toys for children. This isn't a culture of just survival. It's a culture of meaning and beauty and play.
So, as evening would fall, the focus would shift from work and craft to the most critical human technology of all, community. I mean, how did they keep a society running without laws or police or prisons? So here's the crucial point. They lived in these really intimate, living room-sized societies. Think about that. You knew everyone's voice, their habits, their strengths, their weaknesses. This intense familiarity, well, that was the very foundation of their entire social structure.
And they had these really clever ways of handling conflict without modern institutions. You know, gossip wasn't just idle chatter, it was basically their version of law enforcement. Your reputation was everything, kind of like a social credit score. For serious disputes, you'd have elders who acted as mediators, and for minor rule breaking, a little bit of teasing and social pressure was often more than enough. it was a surprisingly sophisticated system.
And around the fire, they used their most powerful tool of all, stories. See, without writing, stories were how you stored information. A story about a trickster animal might contain a crucial warning about a dangerous predator. A myth about the stars could actually be a map for seasonal migration. Storytelling was literally the hard drive of their entire culture.
So, understanding how our ancestors actually spent their time, it doesn't just teach us about the past. It raises some pretty uncomfortable questions about our lives right now, in the present.
When you lay it all out side by side like this, the contrast is, well, it's stark. Their lives followed this pattern of effort and ease, all governed by natural rhythms. Their attention was focused, and their communities were deeply physically connected. Our lives, governed by the clock, often in a state of constant, low-level work, with our attention fragmented into a million pieces, and our connections filtered through screens. And this, right here, this reveals the central irony of our modern lives. We've created a world of unbelievable technological convenience, designed to save us time, only to fill every single spare moment with more work, more notifications, more noise. We may have less true leisure, less time to simply exist, than the very ancestors we feel so sorry for.
So the question is really worth asking. We've gained so much: safety, medicine, knowledge. It's incredible. But in gaining all of that, have we forgotten something fundamental about the rhythm of a good human day? That balance of effort and rest, of focus and just letting your mind wander, of deep connection to the people and the world right here in front of us. It's definitely something to think about.